I know it's early, but it's week 3 already a must-win game for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll discuss that and more on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to be previewing this Ravens-Cowboys Week 3 matchup. We'll talk about, should the Cowboys try to take away Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry first? What do the Cowboys need to do on offense to win this game? But Landon, big picture, is this kind of a sneaky must-win game for Dallas?
You know, I think it's easy. I think there's arguments to be made either way. I think that it's easy to kind of be a prisoner of the moment and to look at the situation and go, if the Cowboys lose 2 games, this team's going to implode, and that very well can happen. It happens a lot, right? Yeah. But it is still very, very early in the season, right? And we talked about this, throughout the offseason, truly, like that. A couple different things. That the early part of September football is kind of just uneven. It's up and down. We talked about the fact that the Cowboys have a very rough 4-game schedule, right? That they have to get through, and we're still very much in that. And we also talked about the fact that a lot of these rough games are against these kind of non-conference, familiar foes. Mm-hmm. I think that there is an argument to be made, and I'm sure you're going to make it, that like things can snowball on this team if they lose back-to-back home games. I think that certainly is the case.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's like, if they lose, I think they're going to be fine. They play the Giants on Thursday in New York. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to predict that one too early, but I feel pretty confident going into that game. And if you leave September at 2-2, it's not the worst thing in the world. Yeah. Like that's like what you want to be the baseline. If you're 3-1, that's great. But it's more so like you got to prove that you can beat some good teams here, Landon, at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, listen, I definitely think that is the case. But I also think that, this isn't your last opportunity to beat a good team. There's obviously some situations down the road that are in games that are probably more valuable to your playoff chances and that sort of thing that you're going to face. You'll play San Francisco. There's other games that you'll get a real test. Detroit will still be a real test. Mm-hmm. So I do think that is an important factor. But I also think that, as much as it would be disheartening to lose a back-to-back home games and especially in a fashion in which I'm assuming that the game would have gone down if the Cowboys do lose, right? But I also think that, again, as much as we are panicking or some folks are panicking about the way that the Cowboys currently look, it's all going to change in 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks after that. So I think the thing that really will dictate whether or not I feel kind of season long depressed about this team or not is the method in which they play the game, right? If they lose again in the same way like the Saints, then I think there is a panic, right? Because this doesn't seem like a even replacement level defense at that point. But if they correct a lot of the mistakes that they made the previous weeks and Lamar Jackson is just Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter and they win a tight game, I don't know that it's going to be quite the same as, if there's a repeat performance like there was last week, this week with Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm not really into moral wins, right? Or moral losses, right? But if they play a good game and they lose on a 58-yard Justin Tucker kick, like you can live with that. What's going to be really hard, Landon, and you kind of mentioned it, like if they lose another game where they give up, let's say 38 points and the offense only scores 21, then it's like, do they have the right defensive coordinator? Do they have the right personnel on defense? Do they need to make a change? Like, you're going to have a lot of soul searching that's going to go on with this team. But unfortunately, with the game right on Thursday, I don't know how much of that's going to get fixed. But it's not a must-win game in terms of the schedule. But I do think it is a must-win game for the confidence, right? Because you want this team playing with confidence. And if they don't win, then I think you start to see some questions about this Cowboys team. Can they even get back to the postseason this year? I think so many people assumed that the Cowboys would be right back into the playoffs again this year after doing it 3 times in a row. You start off 1-2, and now it's going to be a lot harder to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I actually think that the Thursday game against the Giants could be a good thing if you lose, because, you know, what's the best way to get that taste out of your mouth is to win a football game. So getting an opportunity to take another bite at that apple on a Thursday, I understand it's a short week and those, you know, are difficult, but it's like, I think the Cowboys trying to get a win if they lose 2 games in a row will be an important thing. I also don't like, you know, angling what the Cowboys are going to do. I don't want to see that the Cowboys are going to lose this game, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still think we're going into this like kind of prepping ourselves for them to lose, but I still think there's plenty of opportunity for the Cowboys to win.
Well, and I want to say this is going to be a really good test for a variety of different reasons. As we're recording this, I just saw a little update from John Harbaugh. He said that the Ravens are basically 100% healthy. Nate Wiggins, their first-round pick at corner, who missed the last 2 games, he's going to play this game. This is a Ravens team that's desperate for a win after dropping their first 2. Right. You're not going to face a healthier Ravens team. So, like, this is a really good test. It's a really good opportunity for the Cowboys to kind of measure themselves up against a team who last year was the number 1 seeded team in the AFC and had the best record in the NFL. Like, we should figure out a lot about this Cowboys team coming out of Sunday.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I think for Cowboys fans, I mean, imagine how Baltimore fans are feeling right now. They're 0-2. They have Super Bowl expectations. They have the reigning MVP on their team. You know, sometimes things are just uneven early in the season. That doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. We've seen this a lot in these last few seasons. So I think the Ravens are a great example of a team that, you know, do you think that that's a bad team? Do you think that that's an 0-2 team? I don't, you know, so I think that there's plenty of time for these groups to kind of turn it around and get things going. But you're certainly right that the Cowboys cannot, like, the Cowboys have got to play better in order to get confidence to go in and win some of these games, right? And right now we have not seen, like, we've seen the defense play well in that first game and then terribly in that second game. I think the offense is still just like waiting to wake up. And I think that's what we need to see this week, is kind of seeing the offense kind of finally get its legs stretched and going a little bit more this week.
Yeah, and we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the Cowboys offense, but this is, I talked with Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens. This is not the same secondary that they had last year. They're just not playing as well. But the pass rush is still really good. Justin Madubuike is still one of the best defensive tackles in the league. They're starting to get more from Jason Owe. I'm curious to see how the Cowboys try to attack this Baltimore defense, because this is a different style of defense than what they're used to seeing. They're excellent in the middle of the field with Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton, and generally that's where Dak Prescott likes to attack, right? With CeeDee Lamb in the slot and Jake Ferguson in the middle of the field. So how do they match up against this Ravens defense? I can't wait to watch and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's going to be interesting is that right now the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken, lead the league in a negative way in time to pressure, right? They're actually struggling to get pressure on teams quickly. And what is what's the result of that? I might need to check these numbers, but I'm pretty sure they also lead the league in yards per pass play, right? Yeah. And so I think what's happening is that they have done some good jobs against some of the teams they played in kind of scheming up some pressures at times. They definitely have some. I mean, you mentioned Madubuike.
Yeah,
I was trying to say Mdabuke. Madubuike is obviously we loved coming out of A&M. Like, was a big guy that we were hoping the Cowboys would get again. Cowboys still looking for a defensive tackle, right? And then Owe, I think is like, Odafe Owe is a guy that really had a really good game. I think it was last week, right? Was had a lot of pressures and was able to get a sack, I think, on the very first play of the game, if I'm not mistaken. So they definitely have some guys that the Cowboys need to account for, but overall the pass rush has not been great so far as far as like getting pressure in the passing game or stopping
Quickly.
the pass game.
Quickly.
Yeah, because the Ravens have really struggled to kind of do that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see more kind of bubble screens, more stuff onto the outside, attacking these corners, making them tackle, because that's what you saw some of these other teams do to try to have some success against this Ravens defense, which you're right, is very stout in the middle. I mean, look, that defensive tackle group between Travis Jones and Matabike and you know, all the other guys in there are just, they're big and physical, and they're difficult to run on. And with Roquan Smith in the middle, it's difficult to throw the ball in the middle as well. And then Hamilton as well. So you're right. That spine of that defense is incredibly strong with talent. But at the same time, they've still been giving up yards in the pass game at a higher clip than any other team in the NFL.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys defense against Baltimore's offense. Lamar Jackson, 20-1 against NFC teams in his last 21 games. Jeez. Will the Cowboys try to stop Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson first? We will get to that next. Okay. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's the only sportsbook that I use on game days. Cowboys right now, underdogs at home against the Ravens. I think that's pretty interesting. But we actually have something a little bit different for you this week. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every day, as we will be back on Sunday night, Monday morning, just depends on our schedules, to break down this Ravens-Cowboys game. Hopefully breaking down another Cowboys win. So make sure you tune in for that. But Landon, let's talk about the Baltimore's offense, because this has not been a great offense through 2 weeks. Do you anticipate the Cowboys trying to load up to stop Derrick Henry on early downs to get to third down? Or do you think the Cowboys are going to try to put more athletes on the field to stop Lamar Jackson on early downs?
I think that they're going to load up, because I think Baltimore is going to load up, right? Like, I think that the one thing that we've seen these last few weeks is that the emergence of Isaiah Likely, right, as their second tight end, who really, I mean, that first game was tight end 1, to say the least, right? And then obviously they have Mark Jackson, who is one of the best tight ends in football. They don't have, they have 2 really good, wide receiver duo, right? In Flowers and I'm blanking on Brooks's name. Is it Brooks or
they've got Bateman and
Bateman? That's what I was. Shot Bateman, of course.
Yeah.
And Aguilar is their kind of third receiver, right? So I think that they're likely to see Aguilar's fine. He's a fine player, but I think if given the option, they're probably going to want to load up more in 2 tight end sets, because Likely has shown them more as a receiver, and obviously they're both very good blocking tight ends. So they're gonna load up to try to run the ball, because I mean, again, you and I talked about this before the show. It seems like the script for the last 2 games, I mean, obviously game 1, they're playing the Super Bowl champs, it's a little bit different, but it seems like the script has been for Lamar Jackson for a while is, let's see what we can get out of the rest of this offense before we kind of just give up and let Lamar Jackson be a superhero, right? Yeah. So I think that early on, they're going to try to kind of, run on the Cowboys. They're going to look at what the Saints did. They're going to try to replicate that. I don't know if they have quite the same offensive line that the Saints did in order to replicate that, especially on the right side, where I feel like, they've got a rookie playing guard. They've got a tackle who's not so great. So I think that there is some advantages that the Cowboys could take advantage of, like with Lawrence on that side, putting Parsons over there. And as we talked about, this may be a game where the Cowboys' disadvantage at defensive tackle maybe isn't so great, right? Because the interior of that offensive line is good, but not fantastic, especially on the right side. Obviously, they have a really great center that in Linderbaum that we all love. But I think that they are likely to probably play a lot of, they have already played a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 21 personnel. They're going to get their big people out there. and I think that actually plays into the Cowboys' hands a little bit.
I know that's what's crazy. Is like you think if Baltimore's going to load up to play big, that would not favor the Cowboys because they don't have good defensive tackles. But where Dallas actually got in trouble last week is their defensive tackles were so unathletic that they couldn't get down the field at all in some of these stretch runs, and they were getting blown off the ball. So if Baltimore wants to just try to run power right at you, like that actually plays well into like Linval Joseph's strengths.
Yeah, I think these big guys, they're powerful when they're being asked to move from their spot. They're probably not going to move. But if you ask them to run down the line, like you're saying, chasing down wide zone, they're not able to kind of maintain that power horizontally. And so it's instead of just going horizontal and staying square, they're going back at an angle as they're getting pushed away from the line of scrimmage. So yes, I do think in that sense that plays it. But the other aspect of it that I think plays into it is the Cowboys have very real turnaround on this one. The Cowboys have very athletic linebackers, right? In Clark and Overshown. And the advantage that you feel like Lamar Jackson might normally have as a scrambler, I think it might actually be lessened a little bit when you're playing these kind of bigger bodies folks, because the Cowboys equivalent, the two outside linebackers, if it's Clark and Overshown, or even if it's Liafu, like these guys are athletic and can run. So if Lamar Jackson can't find anybody open, or if he's trying to scoot out the side to find a throwing lane in the flat, you have guys who can close on him in a way that maybe other teams don't in their outside linebackers.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's just more big bodies for him to have to navigate through. Right. So I think when it's more spread out and you guys have more guys out in kind of deeper routes, it creates more space for Lamar Jackson to operate in, and to kind of skip through. If I'm the Cowboys, to me, and I'm trying to employ the kind of Belichickian idea of eliminating their best player and making them play left-handed. I don't know how to specifically do this on a down-to-down basis. I think you're going to have to use a combination of things, but I know this seems obvious, but the guy that you have to focus on is Lamar Jackson, and you have to find a way not only to stop him from feeling comfortable throwing the football, but the thing that probably is the most dangerous aspect of their entire team is Lamar Jackson when he runs the ball. Yeah. And so you've got to find a way to limit that. You got to find a way to be quick to come downhill, because guys like Henry are going to be dangerous once they get ahead of steam. So you just need to be very cognizant of when guys are running the football, and then everyone needs to come downhill quickly, attack the legs of the ball carrier. Do not let these guys get ahead of steam, because in very, very different ways, Henry is difficult with momentum. He's like juggernaut, and Jackson is difficult to tackle when he's in the second level and you're not gang tackling.
So luckily I've gotten to watch a lot of Lamar Jackson over the years against the Steelers. And Pittsburgh is the one team that has found out a way to stop Lamar. And basically what the strategy here is, you're playing zone coverage the entire game, and you're keeping like 8 to 9 guys within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And you are going to live and die by Lamar throwing the ball down the field to lesser receivers, right? Like he's going to have to throw the ball to Nelson Aguilar. He's going to have to throw the ball to Rashad Bateman. Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP because he can make you pay down the field with his deep accuracy, but that's not necessarily the strength of his game. If you let him just run and control the pace of this game and dump the ball off over and over again, you're going to lose. But if you can get him to 3rd and 9, because on 2nd down, he had an incomplete pass down the field that it was 5 yards out of reach, that's how you win this game. So I would love to see the Cowboys have more of an attacking defense. And yes, it's going to leave Diggs one-on-one with Zay Flowers or Kalen Carson one-on-one with Rashad Bateman. But I would rather lose on an awesome throw down the field than getting 8 yards on a run here, a 4-yard pass to Mark Andrews, a 9-yard pass to Zay Flowers. Don't let them just kind of nickel and dime you all the way down the field.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson's not like a good scrambler. He's he's maybe the best.
Yes.
He's maybe the best carrier of the football in the history of the NFL. I'm not exaggerating.
No, and that's why you have to play zone, because you need all of your linebackers and cornerbacks and safeties watching Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. And so it's weird to think that a quarterback, what you want to do is to bait him into throwing the football. But again, the alternative here is death essentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do think, I think, you play shell coverages, you make him make difficult throws into the turkey hole against cover 2. You make him make these, not so much the deep throws. I mean, like, yes, deep throws, like make him make difficult deep throws, but like those difficult intermediate throws, that's where he's really going to struggle as to kind of consistently beat you, I think.
And last week we talked about not blitzing Derek Carr, because if you blitz Derek Carr, he can beat you down the field, right? This is a game where I actually don't mind blitzing Lamar.
Yes.
Like, make him make a quick decision, a quick throw. He's going to beat you a couple times, but if you can get him on 1 or 2 plays where he's throwing into double coverage, or you're playing some robber coverage and Malik Hooker comes down and jumps a slant or whatever, like, that's how you win this game. I think you need to be aggressive and making sure don't be afraid of Lamar, but try to attack Lamar. It's probably your best way to win this one.
And you have to find a way to win on 1st and 2nd down.
Yes.
They are going to try that. That is the new book out on the Cowboys. We talked about the other stuff too, the protections, the play action, the motion, all that stuff is kind of nickel and diming you a little bit, but the philosophy of attacking 1st and 2nd down so that you don't have to face the Cowboys 3rd down, that is what is ultimately going to be try to be replicated by all these teams. The Cowboys have got to find a way to force teams into passing situations so that they can unleash hell on these offenses.
All right, let's make our final predictions. Will the Dallas Cowboys beat the Baltimore Ravens in Week 3? We'll tell you next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Just download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with the madman Tyler Rowland, who will kick you off with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Layden. Best time of the week. Predictions. I predicted the Cowboys to win last week. I predicted them to beat the Saints. Never again will I pick the Cowboys to win. So what do you got here?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to point out that you did make one prediction last week that was correct, and that was that your prediction picking the Cowboys was going to be a problem for the Cowboys,
yes.
And it was. So please don't do that anymore.
I'm not.
By the way, I had a dream last night that the Cowboys were in the Super Bowl and that you picked the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl, and they lost. I swear to you,
that's my fault right there. So wrong in my dreams.
Ruined my dream. Thanks. Look, I think this is a difficult game. And I think this is the Ravens have come into Dallas and ruined hearts before. I know it's been.
Which run hurt you more, the Willis McGahee run or the
Willis McGahee run? I will never ever forget. Like the
what
fact
about the Ron McClain one?
Which one of those 2 runs? No, it was definitely the McClain run. That game I was trying to say was the one I'll never. That 2008 game was just was so despicable, right? Like to lose that way in the last game at Texas Stadium.
The 2012 one was tough. That's the one where the Cowboys went for the 2-point conversion to try to win that game, and Dez had the ball go right through his hands. That was a tough one.
It's crazy because it just feels like there's been several of these. It feels like when I think about the Ravens playing the Cowboys, I think about pain. But what's really, really funny, and I cannot believe this is true, the Cowboys have only played Lamar Jackson 1 time.
Yeah,
like
2020,
which is nuts, right? Like this is an established player in the NFL. He's in two-time NFL? No, just one-time NFL.
No, two-time MVP.
Oh no, he is two times. That's right. That's right.
23. Yeah.
So two-time NFL MVP. He's been in the league for years. The Cowboys only played him once. That's pretty crazy to think about. First time the Cowboys played him, he rushed for almost 100 yards and had a touchdown. Had 2 other touchdowns through the air. The Cowboys got absolutely demolished. I think it was in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's Andy Dalton played that game.
Yeah, it was an ugly game, but Andy Dalton wasn't playing on the defense that day, or at least it looked like Andy Dalton was playing on the defense that day. So I think that I'm picking the Ravens. I think I just think this is a tough matchup for the Cowboys. I definitely see several paths in which they could win this game. Like, the Cowboys could really wake up early and throw the ball well. They're still playing at home, and I still think that we haven't seen the best of this passing attack, obviously. The Ravens are susceptible to getting thrown on. So I do think that there are paths to victory for the Cowboys to win for sure. But I just don't trust this team right now, and especially after last Sunday, I don't know that I could trust them to hold up front. I think that in a traditional Baltimore game, that maybe the defense wouldn't, all the things that we talked about earlier, like the defense wouldn't be as susceptible as they might be against other opponents. But I also think that Baltimore and Todd Monken looked at what happened last week against the New Orleans Saints, and they picked up some pointers. So if they're able to kind of replicate a similar game plan where they're able to be efficient running the football, and only if they're able to dictate the terms in which when they're throwing the football, and not like being forced into obvious passing downs where the Cowboys can come after Lamar, I think that it's going to be tough for this defense to kind of slow down this team on a consistent basis. So I'm going to pick the Ravens. I'm going to pick them to win 27-24. I don't feel great about it, like emotionally or, for the pick. Yeah. But I think at this point, the Cowboys kind of need to earn some trust here.
I definitely think Dallas is going to play better. Now, I think the defense will be much better this week. I'm not so sure about the offense. This is a weird matchup for them, where you want to attack Baltimore on the edges and not in the middle of the defense. That's just not something that Dallas has been great at doing. And I'm not joking, but if I was being serious making a pick, I'm picking Baltimore here for a couple different reasons. It's really hard to play Lamar Jackson if you only play him once every 4 years. And look at the schedule. Look at
his record, right? That's why he's 20-1, right? It's because
the only team that's ever beaten Lamar Jackson in the NFC are the Wink Martindale New York Giants, who just blitzed him like crazy. That's it. That's the only team in a really, really weird game. It's just, he's such a unique player that if you're not exposed to him once every year or twice every year in the division, it's really hard to game plan against him. I also think because you look at Baltimore's schedule coming up, I believe they play Buffalo in week 4, the Bengals in week 5. Like, this is a brutal stretch for the Ravens. They have to win this game. Like, they have to. And that's why I think you're going to see Lamar Jackson run 12 to 15 times in this game, because they're going to need it. Like, they're going to need Lamar Jackson to be Superman. And I think at this point, it's like, we kind of can't worry about his long-term health, because if we lose this game, we're not going to have an end of the season that's even going to matter. So I think this is going to be a kitchen sink game for the Baltimore Ravens. And I do think they're going to pull off a maybe somewhat ugly win. I'm going to go 26-23, something like that.
I had 27-24, I think. So pretty close. I agree too. This is much, much more a must-win game for the Ravens than it is for the Cowboys.
They have to. Well, then you look at their division. Like, their division is just a lot deeper than Dallas is, right? They have Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. I believe Cincinnati's favored to win the division right now, and they're 0-2. Like, they just have better teams in Washington and New York than what Dallas has.
Yeah, and again, to go 0-3 is almost a death signature for your playoff chances, right? Yeah. So I just think that it's, and I am concerned about Lamar and how the Baltimore is going to treat Lamar in this game, because I do think you're right that it's a kitchen sink game for them. And from what we've seen the first 2 weeks, Lamar has kind of taken it on his shoulders and his legs, is what more specifically. So I have a feeling he's going to take a lot of hits from Cowboys defenders. The question is how well does that go? And for me, I'm hoping for the best, but it's a very tough matchup for the Cowboys.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.